although lifting weights itself is very important, you can't help but notice that some people just have it easier. Whether they have better insertions than you, or they have an insane fat distribution, or maybe they just get better stimulus from lifting weights. Whatever it is, it plays a big role in how aesthetic you can actually become. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where all of the worst genetic traits come into place. And chances are you might have one of these. And so that's why I'm going to be going over the top 10 worst genetic traits based on just how much they'll affect your physique negatively. From some that's barely noticeable to some that can literally ruin your physique forever. In 10th place, we have high calf insertion. And so what this means basically is your calf muscle, it ends up very high on the lower leg, right? And so this means you have unideal muscle bellies. And you can see how much of a difference this can make. Like calves, it's a very special type of muscle, right? They are basically almost entirely genetic, which means you can train them, and obviously they'll certainly grow, but if you have a high calf insertion, expect to see something like 60-70% less muscle growth compared to someone with a low calf insertion. But the reason this is in 10th place is because purely from an aesthetics point of view, your calves don't actually matter as much as a muscle like your deltoids, right? Something like your lats, right? A lot of people actually prefer the small look of the calves, and because it can create a the illusion of a more dominant upper leg. In 9th place, we have high lat insertions. So this basically means that your lats are very high up. They end up very high up on your back, and this means you don't get the full back look. And as you can see, it's quite a big difference, right? You can train your lats all you want. You can train your lower lats all you want, but you will never grow your lower lat muscle because it doesn't exist. It's tendons. There's no muscle fiber for you to even train. But there, again, the reason this is in 9th place is because purely from an aesthetics point of view, like this is better. This is better. Because some people actually prefer like the more the less of a the cobra hood type of look. They actually prefer the more clean V-taper look. Yeah. But if you really like the thick cobra look, I suggest you train your lower back specifically with something like a deadlift, something like a hip thrust, a squat, but also your obliques too, with any rotational exercise like a Russian twist. In 8th place, we have wide pelvis. And so this creates an illusion of a wide waist. And this is really a major flaw because if you have this, your waist will be naturally wide. So even though you could be very lean and you can have a wide back and your broad shoulders, the limiting factor isn't any of those. It's actually your wide pelvis. And maybe you realized by now that a lot of aesthetics is actually just illusions. So the best advice I can give to you is really just to make your side delts as big as possible to overdevelop whatever you can. So stuff like overhead pressing, stuff like pull-ups. You really have to develop your side delts and your lats if you really have a wide pelvis. It's quite a big flaw. And you need to be overdeveloping your glutes. And I don't think a lot of guys actually talk about this enough. It's to train your glutes as much as you would train your shoulders. The glute is basically the shoulder of the legs. If you have a naturally wide pelvis, your wide waist, then for your lower body to actually look good, you need to have that curve look that protrudes out below your waist, right? And so do a bunch of RDLs, a bunch of hip thrusts. I know it might look gay, But if you want your lower body to actually look good, you need to do what it takes. Okay, in 7th place, we have very narrow or very wide ribcage. In 7th place, we have this, and you need to realize, right, that both extremes are very bad. The ideal position should be in the middle, where it's not too wide and it's not too narrow. But unfortunately, who gets to decide that, right? Like, if your ribcage is very narrow, it's close to one of a female's ribcage size, then you'll have a naturally smaller frame. So, which is why even with the perfect amount of muscle, you can stack up with all the muscle you want, you will still look worse than someone who just has a good frame and goes to the gym for fun. And by the way, frame and your height are the two things that determine your starting position. If you have a very narrow ribcage and your torso just tends to curve around the middle, and this is why you have in like an hourglass curve shape body. If you're a male and you have that, I'm sorry to say, but it's pretty unaesthetic to be having that. Everyone prefers the V-taper upside down Dorito shape way more than the hourglass shape. It just makes you look way more masculine. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have a very wide ribcage. It's also not ideal, right? Although you tend to have a wider chest, a bigger frame, wider shoulders, and more chest far apart, your ribcage also gives the illusion of a thicker midsection, and it creates the rectangular brick look, which is arguably one of the worst body types, body shapes, right? It's just harder for you to achieve the V-taper. It's just harder for you to gain that lean aesthetic physique. It's pretty simple to mitigate some of the problems. If you have a small rib cage, then you need to fill up your frame with a bunch of oblique training, a bunch of lat training, just the usual stuff, the shoulder training. If your rib cage is too big though, then you need to stop training your shoulder. You need to stop training your obliques, because nobody looks good with a big rib cage and also big obliques. It just doesn't complement each other. Stop training your obliques, train your lats, train your shoulders, skip the oblique training. I guarantee you that will fix some of the problems. But in 6th place, we have a high chest insertion. This is such a big flaw. Personally, I have this flaw. I can tell you for sure that the chest muscle itself can get very big, but you have this weird gap between your chest. And basically that it's called the bone's called sternum, right? Like, there is no muscle fiber between that gap, and there's no way for you to even train to gain muscle between that gap. It's all tendons. There's no muscle fiber for you to actually train, so therefore you can't actually ever achieve a full square looking chest. That being said though, there is actually somewhat of a fix, and that is to just try your best to train all two heads of your chest with an incline bench and a normal bench. Pretty self-explanatory, right? But then there's also another method, and I call this the cope method, because it's just frauding. It's just angle frauding, right? Like, you want to take better photos. As you can see, it's the same physique, but this with a higher camera angle, you can actually kind of block off like the sternum gap. Like, you can see the sternum gap is very small here, but the sternum gap is way bigger over here because I have a lower camera angle. I know it's kind of cope, but there you go. By the way, from this point onwards, the rankings will only get increasingly more brutal. So if you're easily offended, or if you're a bit of a soy boy, you can click off this video right now. I don't care. But yeah, in 5th place, we have unbalanced ab structure. And this is basically what causes a 4-pack instead of a 6-pack. Or even if you have a 6-pack, it's not very symmetrical. It's just unbalanced, doesn't look good. And Yes, actually, David Lade has his flaw. This is one of his only flaws, right? And you know, but other than his ab symmetry, like I'd say he has really good insertion and really good fullness, which is arguably way more important. If you look at Jeff Nippard, his abs are more like a four pack, and which is not really aesthetic, right? Because there's very low separation between those fibers, so it's not as defined. You can't really see a six pack. And yeah, this can destroy how your abs look, but the best way to somewhat try and fix this is to make sure you're targeting both the upper and the lower section of your abs. And do this not only through isolated abs work and not just through like a bunch of these circuits, 6 minute ab burner circuits you see online, but actually use your abs in these compound exercises where your abs act like the stabilizing muscle, primarily through stuff like deadlift, hip thrusting, squatting. Personally, right, I've like never done any ab work, and I can tell you for sure, my abs is my strongest point in my physique. Never done any isolated abs work. I just do compound exercises for my abs. In fourth place, we have very slow metabolism or very fast metabolism. And if you have either one, it's gonna be so much more harder to just look aesthetic. If you have a slow metabolism, it means you're naturally gonna burn less calories than average, and so you're in the um endomorph body type, this one right here, where you have a very slow metabolism, and it's just way harder for you to put on mass, right? I mean, it's more likely for you to put on mass. It's harder for you to burn fat. It's way easier for you to put on muscle, but not only that, also fat. Most powerlifters and bodybuilders and stuff like that, fat people, they're in this category. That's why, to be honest, like most bodybuilders, most powerlifters, they don't actually look that aesthetic. Like their physique is out of proportion. They have a bubble gut. They don't look good. But if you have a very fast metabolism, which means you naturally burn more calories than you can actually eat, you have a very low appetite, then it means you're in the ectomorph body type, where it's just easier to stay lean at a very low body fat, because you would have a harder time gaining muscle because you'll just always burn more calories than you can eat. Ideally, you want to be having a normal metabolism and be in the mesomorph body type, where you get the best out of both worlds and you also build a proportional, attractive amount of muscle whilst keeping yourself lean enough to see definition and also vascularity. It's just the jack of all trades, master of all trades, even. All right, in third place, we have low stimulus response. This one is going to be very brutal. This is one of the most overlooked / ignored genetic traits, but it's so important because it can literally mean you gain muscle or you literally don't. So there's something called satellite cells in your body, which basically multiply and fuse together to form new tissue whenever you work out. But the problem with this is about a third of the population, of the human population, have a genetic variant where they either have slower efficiency in these satellite cells, or they have a lower amount of these satellite cells. And so they don't work properly. And so you will have a harder time trying to gain muscle, and your muscle actually decays a lot faster. So yeah, it really doesn't matter if you've genuinely had a good workout, if your whole, muscle repair system is destroyed, it's very flawed. It just means you can't gain the most amount of muscle, right? And there's not much you can do. But you could I guess, maximize your mechanical tension, which is the main driver of hypertrophy. But even so, it's going to be pretty hard. But I guess just do your best. Try to train within the 6 to 8 rep range. Use really relatively heavy weights. Train close to failure. Um, yeah, use the full range of motion so you can actually trigger a response. But how much of that response will actually build you muscle, that's utterly up to genetics. Yeah, it's just so brutal. All right, in second place, we have a high midsection fat distribution, and a lot of people are going to be offended by this, but yeah, the second to last worst genetic trait for aesthetics is high midsection fat distribution. And the reason this is just such a big flaw is because most of your fat is stored around the um, waist. This is actually the worst place you can store fat. It's around your waist, right? Which is why a lot of people regard this as the stubborn fat area. Because as you get leaner, your belly is actually one of the last places to lose fat. It's your belly. This is where fat will come off last. But I think this one's kind of self-explanatory, right? Like it messes up your V taper. If your fat messes up your V taper, it ruins your abs visibility. Your belly is one off, if not the worst place you can store fat. I mean, just look at the people that are fat. Like, very few people find fat people attractive. It's the universal truth. Like, anyone who thinks otherwise needs to wake up, stop coping, wake up to reality. The worst part is you can't specifically target belly fat loss. Like, poor guy, but he just has to cut. He just has to eat clean. There's no way to specifically target midsection fat loss. All right, but finally we have come to the last place, the first place actually, the number one biggest, worst genetic trait for aesthetics. And if you have this, it might as well be over depending on how bad it is. Okay, and it's extremely narrow clavicles, and this is definitely self-explanatory, right? So we'll be going over from the top. So this is actually where you have very wide clavicles, all the way to basically the worst. If you have more than 17 centimeters in your clavicle length, this means you can actually achieve like the David Lay look. You can actually get to the 1.9x shoulder to waist ratio. Okay? And this means you're actually literally born from like with a V taper. Maybe you're a teenager and you're experiencing you already look very wide. The best advice I can give to you is to not waste this potential. Actually do something about it. Yeah, but this is average. You can still achieve wide shoulders with this, but you're just in the average. If it's less than 14 cm, this is mildly concerning. It's necessary for you to overdevelop your delts, overdevelop your lats for you to even have a chance at looking good. And if it's less than 13 cm, you're cooked. Just get surgery, bro. Like, no amount of muscle is gonna fix this. And I think at this point, like, it's considered like a genetic defect. Like, you need to go to the doctor if you have this like narrow of a clavicle. But that being said, I hope you can see how important this is. I mean, it literally messes up the most important measurement in terms of aesthetics, and that is the shoulder to waist ratio. Ideally, it should be 1.6 or higher, but for reference, David Lade has 1.9, and I'd say a large part of that is due to his naturally wide clavicles. It's just that important. Hope you can see why this is in first place. But if you're a teenager, this is actually one of the last times where you can actually grow your your bones, your clavicles. It's just to make sure that you're eating a lot of meat, eating a lot of minerals, especially calcium, a lot of vitamin D. Get out in the sun, eat a lot of eggs. Stop eating a bunch of like plant foods. Stop eating a bunch of like sugar. Stop eating a bunch of junk food. Yeah, and also get a lot of sleep. Sleep at the same time every day. Sleep max to bone max, right? It's one of the only periods of your life where you can actually naturally lengthen your clavicles. But yeah, these are my rankings. But yeah, a lot of this is my opinion, but I think I've been able to justify it. So yeah, if you like what you see here, I've got a free and paid private community. It's the top link in the description. I've got a bunch of courses on looks maxing, a bunch of courses on physique to get you in the best shape of your life, to actually get that aesthetic lean physique. I've got a bunch of group calls if you want one-on-one direct feedback and checkups. And if you join right now, there's a free forum that you can talk to with a bunch of like-minded guys, and I'll be posting there fairly frequently too. Yeah, if you found this video valuable and you want to help me spread my advice, you could consider subscribing or liking the video. That would make my day. But yeah, what would the best version of yourself do right now? Goodbye.